Hi friends, welcome back and I am Prithvi, and today we will be looking at when would India become a 5 trillion economy. So Mr. Modi had said that India will become a 5 trillion economy by 2025. Obviously different people have a different opinion about this. So IMF initially said that we'll become a 5 trillion economy only by 2029. So by 2028 we'll hit for 4.9 trillion as per IMF, and in 2029 we'll cross the 5 trillion mark and probably end the year at 5.5 trillion. Now they've revised that to 2027, and different people have given different projections. So the IMF has projected our GDP growth rates in 2022 at 8.2. They've revised it downwards from 9%, and for the next 3 years they assume that we'll grow at around 7%, and post that we'll grow at 6.5 and then at 6.2. So we would hit that target around 2027 as per IMF, but the Indian chief economic advisors mentioned that we probably should ideally hit that mark of 5 trillion around 2026. Now the important question which we should look at is, it's right that India would become a 5 trillion economy. When it becomes a year here and there does not matter. What is more important for us is to understand as to what is going to be the change and how it will impact common people over here. How many people can be pulled out of poverty? So we've seen China has pulled out 800 million people in 40 years from poverty. We can clearly see that their per capita income was $50 less than ours in 1980s, and their now present per capita income is almost as high as $10,000. It's almost 5 times higher than India's right now. India's around $2,100. So we are basically 5 times less than them. And their economy was the same size as ours in 1990. Because they had opened up the economy, looked at doing large scale infrastructure projects, and the government really pushed for a free capital market. They did that in 1980, and the benefits started coming in after 84. So you can clearly see their per capita income started increasing, their GDP started increasing, and they've done really well. So the same question arises for India is, if we are going to reach to this 5 trillion mark, how do we do it? Now the government of India actually looks at, we would hit 5 trillion by having a contribution from the 3 sectors as follows. So agriculture will give us 1 trillion, manufacturing will give us another trillion, and 3 trillion will come from services. Now the big problem from this is number of Indians, close to 75 to 80% of people are still employed in agriculture, and we follow a very primitive method of agriculture where there's disguised employment. There is a lot of family members are employed in using primitive techniques, using hands, no machines, open field irrigation for growing crops. Because of that, the entire family gets in and is actually doing the work in the fields, but that is just hiding our employment numbers, because the same work can be easily done by one person and he can probably take up other people's work as well. So we can look at agriculture taken up by large corporations or by cooperatives to make it more efficient and freeing up people to do actually other work. So a very important problem which we have faced in our economy is, how do we work, right? So if there's a problem in our manufacturing or in our agriculture or how the country is going, we actually have to identify that problem, admit that there's a flaw, and only then can we work towards it. So when we look at China, so we looked at this, they realized that they didn't have enough food to eat. Most of the people were in poverty, and they realized that their manufacturing was very bad. What they did is they actually went to other countries, saw how the manufacturing was being done in Europe or how it's done in America, and they adopted the best standards from those countries, started making things and manufacturing products for other countries at a much lower cost, so at 20% of the cost or much lower cost than what these developed economies were making. So their advantage was, okay, start making the same products by investing into infrastructure and using their low labor cost and achieving competitiveness in that field by increasing the quality and reducing the cost. Now the problem with India is that we refuse to admit what the problem in our economy is. We are still in that mindset that we are going to become a 5 trillion economy, but what is that 5 trillion doing for us? So if you look at that, our per capita GDP only doubles once in 10 years. It's 2,100 US dollars right now, but 15 years back it was around 1,200 or to 1,000. So it's taken 15 years for it to almost double. So now you see the contribution is not helping people to actually increase their income, and nor are we becoming competitive in the world space, in space of manufacturing or in services. So the first thing we have to do is open up our markets in a right way, right? So let's take the example of our car industry, right? So we have a very high import duty on our cars. So any car which is imported from abroad, so say if a Tesla gets imported, they're going to slap a duty of almost 150% on that car. So something which costs like a Model 3 Tesla costs 30,000 US dollars in America would cost over here 75,000 US dollars in India. Multiply that by 80, it will come to around 60-70 lakhs. The same car, if imported at the zero cost, will cost you only 21 lakhs in India. And we are supposed to buy that car at 60 lakhs. Now, because of this, low quality cars, which not only have a major impact on how we view manufacturing, we still want to make money in India by making bad products. It is generating employment, but that is the wrong way of making your industry competitive to the outside world. So our car companies cannot go abroad and sell the same product which they manufacture over here and compete on a global level. So you can compete in India because there are a lot of protective measures. You made an environment where all your manufacturing is being done in a protective environment. You make bad products which are bad in safety, in standard, in terms of technology, and you expect that you will become competitive. So if you run away from competition, you would not be able to grow. If we actually open up our car market, for that matter, companies will actually be forced to improve or perish. They already have got an advantage of 20-30 years. Now, if they want to do well in India, they should be made to compete with global companies who are making good products at a level playing field. So this will not only increase competition but will also improve your product. Obviously, you can give them some protectionism initially, but stretching that competition or stretching their advantage for 30-40 years beats the entire purpose. So there's a monopoly in a lot of these markets, and our markets have not been opened up to competition. So the more the competition will come, more companies will enter, more factories will be set up, more manufacturing will be set up. Rather than giving PLI schemes to Indian manufacturers, we are going to kill our small scale industries and only give benefits to large corporates over here, which are going to keep the market more competitive and improving on the way as well. So how does the government increase the per capita GDP in our country? First, the government actually has to give the right amount of money which a farmer deserves for his crops. So if he's growing grains and vegetables, he should get the right price or the right market price for his products. So government has to ensure that middlemen and people who are doing hoarding, etc., are actually taken care of. So if farmers get the right price for the products, it will do two things. It will make them richer. Once it makes them richer, their consumption will increase. If the consumption will increase, they'll buy more products and services and spend more. Once they do that, our GDP would also go up. So the farmers, which constitute 60-70% of the people, if their incomes go up, their consumption goes up, our GDP increases drastically. Second thing which the government has to do is the government has to take care on where they spend money on. So I understand the government is responsible for public spending, but the public spending has to be done in form of asset creation. So the capital which is used by the government or the spending which is done by the government has to be done in such a way that it makes assets and makes it efficient for people to do their work, transport their goods and services. So the government has to focus on road, rail, ships, ports, on giving electricity, provide water, sanitation. So all these things which are important to increase a person's efficiency is very important. So if imagine if it takes me 10 hours to move my products from one city to the other, and if that can be done in 2 hours because a better road is available or better railroads are there, so those things will actually improve efficiency and productivity for people in India. So by spending a certain amount of money, the government would benefit by giving us this huge boost to our economy. Third thing is urbanization drives growth. It's moving people out from rural populations. It will not only help us improve agricultural productivity because a lesser amount of people will be engaged into agriculture and would be dependent on the same amount of land. So more incentives should be given to people to actually move into cities, probably to smaller tier 2 cities. These people will actually look for jobs in cities, into manufacturing jobs and services jobs. It will also create a demand for housing in these urban centers. So the government should actually spend on infrastructure in these cities and create them into manufacturing hubs or urban centers. So by doing this, we'll not only create jobs in the construction segment, we'll actually also increase our higher paying jobs as well. Private consumption will go up. Small businesses which actually are providing to this construction sector will also have a direct impact from this, and it will help us contribute to a higher GDP. So this will give a boost to our banking sector as well. It'll give them easy centers where they can give credit. So our credit growth is around 8 to 9%. But in order to become a big economy or become a 10 trillion economy by 2030, I believe one of the prominent businessmen said that we need to have a credit growth of around 16%. In the last 3-4 months, our credit growth actually has gone up to 12%, but it is still desirable to get a credit growth to 16%. Another thing which the government has to look at is the number of banking licenses it has to give. So credit growth is very important. Our debt to GDP ratio is around 50%. That in China is around 190%. So if you want to become a big economy, you need a number of banks, and these banks should be able to lend to people at a very low interest rates, ideally be around as cheap as possible. So if someone gets credit at 18%, he's not going to take the risk. He's not going to invest into expansion. He's not going to buy things. So credit growth at low interest rates is very important to grow, to give that boost to our economy. Now the fourth thing, which as I told you previously, is that we have to become competitive in the sectors which we choose. So India is competitive in IT, but if we're looking at artificial intelligence, China is going ahead of us. So we have to look at sectors where we can improve. We can become competitive on a world scale. So if you become competitive and on a global scale, you'll start doing exports more, and your exports will grow. So IT services are competitive, but things like auto, pharma also need to become competitive on a global level. And we have to choose industries where we can compete on a global basis and invest in these industries or these sectors, so that our exports also are on par, are on the same quality as other companies in other countries, and we can become competitive on these grounds. It is important that we become a big economy, but our per capita GDP also increases. Or you've liked our video, I request you to please hit the like button and do subscribe to our video if you've not subscribed.